Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. A few weeks ago, I had a little fun kind of going over 15 years and 5 tips for a game that I've determined is just frankly one of the greatest ever, called Fields of Fire. After that, I started thinking about another topic on my mind that's been pretty common these days, and that is crowdfunding. I realized that it had been about 13 years since I backed my first Kickstarter game, and I wanted to, for my own personal information, I started to think about, what is the reality of my experience? How did it really go versus how I think it went? Because a lot of times during the times for those who involve themselves with crowdfunding is, what has it been like for real? Like some of the things you'll hear, like it's always late. They're always late. They're over, too many minis, too many not, whatever. Blah. Too many excuses. It's all more trouble than it's worth at times, and other times, but there have been some pretty amazing things as well from Kickstarter and crowdfunding. And so I have put together, I took the last few weeks to kind of over time in the back burner, kind of go back in time and go, what was my actual experience versus what my gut hunch is. And I wanted to compare the reality of my experience to how I felt about it and see if they sync up or not. So I'm going to share those with you today. Again, this is a retrospective of the years that I have been doing kick funding, game crowding, and stuff. So let's just get into it. So a couple things to note, first off, before we get too crazy, is that I have done 162 projects, as you can see. 25 to 75 bucks has been the average. Obviously, some of those are a lot higher than others. Some of them are not. Either way, that's what it is, and we'll not talk about that price. But generally speaking, it's not that bad when you consider how many years. But still, you're like, yeah, okay. What is this meant to be? This is a retrospective, particularly, and what does that mean? In development, in software engineering, there's a thing called agile, or a methodology, a paradigm, where you have a certain segment of work, say 2 weeks or a day or a week or 3 weeks, and then after that, part of the pure agile, without getting too pure, is you sit down at the end and you do sprint reviews, sprint planning, whatever, and then you do a retrospective, and that's more of a loosey-goosey kind of reflection of that period of time. What are the pros and cons? What was our gut feelings? What were some things that we could have done better? What went well, etc. To find interesting facts. And that is really what the vibe of this is meant to be before we get too into it. It's what it's not is a fundamental assessment of crowdfunding. I'm not here to go, hey, crowdfunding, let me give you advice. I'm not going to give you advice because, well, we all make up our own minds and we all have different experiences. This is a retrospective of my experience. I have no interest in changing anyone's mind on crowdfunding at all. Again, this is about me, and nor do I want people to get take too seriously the reality of what I've compiled, because this is not a deep, accurate mathematical evaluation. This is more Magic 8 Ball than Monte Carlo sim. Let's not get too sillified on that one. So you may see some things go, well, if you pivot that way and you do this and you take the equivalent of the North Pole and divide it by the South Pole. None of that. Again, somebody should. We all have different experience, and I would love to have someone go in and really nail down maybe their own mathematical analysis. But mine is really to go, hey, did we have fun or did we not? So with that, let's move on to the next one. How I did compile the information. Kickstarter made it the easiest. I basically looked at all the projects and I went through and I publisher, the game, how much it cost, when it was backed, when the campaign was going on, when they said they'd arrive, when they actually arrived, drama level, for instance. That's more of a subjective kind of how many, like, the ship was lost, I got sick, we had unforeseen circumstances for the 11th unforeseen time, and so, pardon that, and then we have the campaign rating, which is kind of how I felt the campaign itself was run. And then we have the product rating, for which I was like, when I did get the product, was it worth it? And those are kind of the heuristics I used to figure it all out, of evaluate it over time. I did I did find, again, Kickstarter made this information easy to kind of go through one by one. Game Fund Game Found and Backer Kit, not so easy. They were a little bit trickier because it was just harder to get that information going through old emails and stuff like that. So, but I did gather the information nonetheless. And without further ado, let's discuss some topics. The delays, how prevalent were they actually? What magnitude? What was the scope of the delays that happened? We all know delays happened, and the common thought is everything gets delayed. There's the everything gets delayed, so deal with it crowd. There's the I don't understand why things get delayed because it's just not. I mean, by now, after all these years, I'm not going to wade into either sides of that poll. I'm just going to say what happened in my case. I was actually surprised the number wasn't higher. About 80% of my projects were delayed, and of those 80% projects, uh, yeah, I mean 20. I actually thought it would be closer to 90%. To be honest with you, that doesn't mean great, but that means like yeah, of the projects, 80% of them were delayed. I don't find that surprising at all. There was an issue if you look year by year to the amount of delays or the delay going on. That the uh, COVID years obviously had some sort of COVID relation in some regard, at least to the height of that. That could be a number of reasons, a lot of conjecture. I have my theories, but whatever. The worst offenders, you can see here, are some of the games that came out in like tons of delays. Obviously, Seize the Bean takes the crowns for Seize the Delay. Carpe Wait 'em. And so there's that, just kind of interesting information. Best on-time delivery. So let's give some fun credit. There's these group of games that delivered either right on time or early. Some shout out to Garphill Games, which seems to have been able to do it with just like that. Anything with Vital Lacerda has been almost a sure thing, and smaller games, generally speaking, have best on-time deliveries. Not an exact science. Over the years, just to kind of show you the whole gauntlet of all the different companies that and the delay levels on them. And then yeah, you can see like gee, the 80% the on times. Yeah, so there we go. That's that. How just for me, I'm like, okay, so based on how many delays, what was my rating on the games, and did it seem like the longer a game took, the worse I rated it? It's more like a personal reflection on me, and the answer is no. I rated the game once it arrived exactly as the game should be, and as you can tell, things are getting better in that regard. But we'll go over that in the next topic. Again, you can see like the distribution of my ratings versus delays. Yeah, yeah. Like anyway, and then topic was cost. How much is it costing? Is it getting more? Is there more cost? Um, Spending over the years obviously increased. I don't know that I mean, it was both quantity of things I backed, but also cost of stuff I backed. And that doesn't seem too far out of date. Obviously, I had a pretty awful life, life, uh, life event in the last few years, and so the spending has been a little less pronounced. Costliest games over the years, Company of Heroes has wound up being the one that cost me the most by far. Ice Guard, all of these games, as you'll notice, are very, very large scale games, lots of bulk to them. Um, Publisher wise, how I've spent, Awaken Realms apparently gets the nod on that one. Compass Games and Eagle Games. So cool. Good. Congratulations, guys. Then we get into topic 3, which is campaign competency. How have the different crowdfundings been executed overall? If I had a general idea of what my experiences was, again, subjective, my experience, how did it go? And honestly, really, I didn't include in this chart thieves. Like there was a pirate game, that Sea of Thieves, that the guy took the money and ran like a dirtbag, and then the other two were games that were just basically took the money and ran out of money or failed. Again, not and again, no, none of these are games that I'm still waiting for. These are all games that actually arrived, and so some of the ones are still in flux from a couple years waiting around. So those are not included in this sample set. But yeah, so you'll notice that honestly, it hasn't. It's been generally pretty positive for my satisfaction overall. Sometimes it's easy to magnify on the bad experience and then have it like kind of rise up on the chart a little higher than you think. But no, it's been good. Best quality of the satisfaction were, honestly, it's almost like the more expensive ones actually did have better satisfaction. Super impressed with these companies, particularly some of them have gone through a lot. You'll notice not every delay was unjustified, and so I wouldn't go, well, if you delay, you're a bad company. Some serious things happened that could not have been controlled, particularly with Company of Heroes, that that sort of led to my understanding of, hey, they above and beyond to try to get something really cool out to people. And then product rating. Was the product worth the price and the wait time? Let's take a look. Product rating, yeah, again, Company of Heroes is sort of my star of the show, just because of all they endured, all they went through, the quality of the product, the quality of the support, the quality of the going the extra mile. So that was definitely cool. Ice Guard, again, you're going to see that the games I spent more on, obviously, those get a lot of extra love as far as how I felt about them, not just because they were shiny and happy, but because I really loved the product that got delivered. Most expensive flops, again, subjective. You all might like them, but I found these to be ones that I did not really feel were worth it. Of the bad games, these are the top 10 ones that I could have done without and never batted an eye. Um, I know some guys really love Heroes of Might and Magic, the board game. That might change over time. I did not get into it as much. Yeah, but let's look at the product rating by publisher. Eagle Games, Compass Games, product ratings super. When they say they're going to deliver in its time range, they're almost always right on time. I almost never get anything that says it's shipped and it's in any tracking. It just shows up, and it shows up really well packaged. So, but yeah, good on those. Um, and then just for fun, here was an example of great games that just the campaign was just a disaster, or it was just so late and so much went on that it was almost giving up hope. Hogs of War was a hugely cool game that delivered expansion packs to people instead of the actual core game, and it took almost like a couple months before actually getting all of the product afterwards. I think it might be one of the reasons Fun Again Games just got out of it, because it was a debacle. Really, it was not a debacle in any nefarious sense, but the years going on and on and on and on and on, it just, the campaign was like, I really like Far Out Games. I love what they've done. I love everything they put out. But this one was almost like, but then it came out and it was beyond the pale. Is an awesome. Rise and Fall was a game that had just an absolute disaster of a publisher, completely awful, blame shifting, lying, just crappy experience. But when the actual Rise and Fall game came out itself, is a huge breath of fresh air. And I hope that I can see that replicated with a competent publisher someday, because it is a design well worthy of the backing. But man, I wouldn't use Ludically ever again. And then the bad ones. Who had the bad campaign, the bad product? Well, Total War. I'd love to say I like that game. I like the potential, but when you've got basically a bunch of firefighters on a Discord channel trying to make sense of it and actually make it work, and a bunch of people defending it based on its potential and stuff, blech. Awful Fantasy Adventures was just awful in every regard. It was, yeah, don't reinvent your game right after it backs and make it a dumbed down piece of garbage and then pretend you did okay. And Fantasy Baseball, which kept getting delayed, and then they started other campaigns on different crowdfunding to try to get away with not having to answer their backwards. And then the product themselves are just garbage. So anyway, that's the bad note. Let's get some happiness. What's the overall worth it factor? If you take the campaign and the product and you put it together, what was the whole? I mean, was this whole experience worth it? Is it even worth it for me? Yeah, let's take a look. Distribution of, again, like, by and large, the experience has been anything from excellent good to very good in enough ways that I think that it offsets the times when things just don't go as well. I think that the product itself arrives, the campaign experience arrives, have been generally close to decent and pop, you know, popular enough for me or good enough for me. And again, you can see here, like, the right smack dab in the good range is where we find most products that I've had. So yeah, overall, average delivery delay 5 months. Most expensive bad game, or game that just didn't do it was Total War Rome. Cheapest excellent Kickstarter was For the Love of Board Games, but that's a little bit of a misnomer because that was a digital publishing. So by the time the crowdfunding was over, it was pretty much ready to go anyway. I've always wondered if the cost and the delay were correlated. Like the more a game costs, the more of a delay. And there is a slight tendency for that, but I don't know that I would find that to be. I don't know how authoritative I would take with that. In general, 100 plus of the projects are just good campaigns with good products. It's like comfort food. It's good. It's not. You're not going to dress up for it, but it's good stuff. Eagle Games, one of the top rated publishers, and certain publishers that were always good but never great, like 7 of them. So, but that's it. That's kind of the general gist of my experience. I think it's a good time to be alive. From the very first game I backed, which was Gauntlet of Fools, based on Dominion, the designer's previous game. Gauntlet of Fools was not even close to worth it. But now you look at everything that's come around, all of the products that have come out over Kickstarters and funding and stuff, and I have to say that my experience is more than sufficiently positive to justify the purchases that I've made and to endure some of the silliness that goes on for most of them. I'm still never going to be forgiving to people who take money and run, but that is such a small subset that I can't feel too bad about it. I don't want to focus on the small percentage of bad experiences that eclipse what is a overwhelming percentage of really good experiences. So that's it. Maybe you found it interesting, maybe not. I'd love if anyone else has done some sort of analysis to really get past um, the hey, here's the general consensus, but what is the reality of your experience show? So if anybody else, any of those have done that and probably can do it with a more mathematical penchant, then I would love to hear from it. But yeah, take care everyone. We'll see you next time on Hairbrain Games.